Good evening. Today, we are truly going to go into a very interesting world, very, very familiar to everyone. This is me talking to you today. Just brief information about me for those who do not know me and might be listening to me for the first time. My name is Lyudmila Valova. I've worked in official medicine for 37 years. For 20 years, I was working in military hospitals. I'm former military doctor. Now I am retired. For 20 years, I've professionally worked on herbal compositions, supplements. I have studied herbal compositions in detail of 5 international companies. I'm active participant and speaker of 15 international conferences that happened in 7 countries. And now let's move with our topic. So our topic is challenges of the 21st century. Is it possible to befriend stress? It so happens that there are very urgent topics in the 21st century that are important basically for every human. This is the topic of blood sugar, which we have already considered, high cholesterol, which is also very topical. We've discussed that, and now we continue by discussing stresses. Stress attacks us from every side and with every year more and more intensively. Humanity has been dealt a rough hand in these decades of the 21st centuries. The stressors are many and they are different, but I have chosen here the ones that it seems to me are relevant to every person. First, constant increase of prices, which influences everyone and everyone gets stressed. Next, constant increase of food prices. This touches everyone again. And its impact is unpleasant to our body as a stress. Next, utilities also go up. When we take the new invoice and it has different number for electricity and gas, and well, it doesn't cause us joy. The end of 2020, the whole 2020, of course, coronavirus, the pandemic of COVID, and it seems we have gone through such a stress. What can be more awful? But it turns out it can. This is military invasion of Russian Federation into Ukraine. And I'm completely confident that this information as source of stress is touching not just the population of Ukraine, but any person who is not indifferent to such an awful word as war. So it all influences us, starting from weak impacts to strong impacts. And all of that is called stress. Let's go and check some background. Walter Bradford Cannon, an amazing scientist who was nominated for Nobel Prize 27 times. Can you imagine how many discoveries he had? Well, he didn't get the prize, but within our topic, this person is the one who gave us this term, stress. which, if we interpret it from English, it's pressure, tensity, something that impacts a human. And our response when something impacts us this way is connected not only with some negative things, but also with positive things. Let's take an example. Our defensive response to any factors that bring physical trauma. What can it be? Like, let's take extremes. Hunger or overeating. Overeating is also a stress for the body. Cold or heat, both are stresses. Then psychological reaction. It's to the death of a loved one, a negative impact on our body. Or another side, what could it be? Joy, unexpected joy. You know, out of the blue. This is also stress. I just remembered the classical example of 19th century, a fairy tale that she was so excited that she died. It was a phrase from one fairy tale. It seems that joy is a positive factor, but it turned out to be a stress. And in this respect, you have to remember that old people have to be gradually prepared even for joyful news, because it's also stressful. So in his research, Walter Bradford Cannon, well, his research was had very interesting title, Fight or Flight Response. Cannon described three main responses of our body. The first one is immunological response. What is that? It's on the level of biochemical processes that happen inside us that we do not see or do not feel. The next response is physiological. Physiological means that the biochemical changes of processes in the cells of our body already start manifesting externally. We feel some changes within our body. And the last one is psychological response. Of course, these are the changes of our behavior. Our body, no matter how many higher education degrees we have, responds to these changes in a certain way. And this response of our body to the stress is called reactivity of the body. These are the reactions of the body to stress. And the reactivity is characteristic to all living things. And this reaction of our body is as important as metabolism, growth, reproduction, everything we have from nature. Reactivity also takes its dutiful and important place. Human reactivity is much more diverse and complex than of our brethren in nature. Everybody has reactivity, but ours is more complex because it depends not only on our physical condition, but also on our social factors. That's our feature. And also it depends on the influence of scientific and technological progress. We have such a system that is called active response. Why? Because life changes, speed of life changes. We are in a hurry, and everything gets more and more complicated and complex around us. And so our reactivity has to be sharper, more active. And there is even a term for that phenomenon. the man-machine system. And you know how I would call it? It's a man bike, man electro bike. Why is it important? Why do you need to know this? Because here is a fast change of eyesight and hearing irritation. The faster is the speed, the faster our brain has to work for those factors. And so if this system doesn't work, then what will happen if we don't respond fast enough to stimuli? We will have trauma, psychological disorders, etc. For example, I have an acquaintance, why I remembered a scooter and reaction or reactivity. It turns out my acquaintance fell down from electrical scooter and lost her teeth. So that's what the failure of this system causes. Megapolises, our flow of information is crazy. To just cross a street, human has to resolve so many tasks. There have been some theoretical calculations that if our predecessors simply had to cross the street in the megapolis nowadays and resolve in this brief moment so many tasks, they would have gone mad. And there is a special place in our life is dedicated to the second signal system, which differentiates us from all other living beings. It's only in humans. It's how words impact us, not only oral, but also written words that we can read, how they impact our psyche. And our response can be in two ways: heightened reactivity, hyper, when we have painful reaction, when we are irritated. Earlier, when they gave people characteristics, I remember this wording: painful reaction to criticism. There was this wording. So person is responding to words. It's a second signal system, or the other way around. To the same irritant, there could be a lower reactivity. Hypergia. What do they say usually? This person couldn't care less. No matter you say what you say to this person, they don't respond. It's indifference. So the degree of reactivity of a human to different things changes with age. Well, they say person became wiser. But with words, you can support, everyone knows that. Like, for example, when people cheer their athletes, that supports them, no doubt. But the words can also kill.
How is it possible? There are people who commit suicide, and there are new words. Everyone knows them now, and it is also something that goes through our second signal system, and it causes stress and even conditions. You all know the word bullying, or when uh, there is abuse, hurting with words. That's what we are facing today in the 21st century. There are new words that are actually related to the second signal system. And now, Canadian biochemist Hans Hugo Bruno Celia, uh, this scientist also worked in this area, but what did he do? He carried out experiments using laboratory rats. He created stress conditions, the most different ones. And he studied not only their behavior. If we remember the first scientist I mentioned, he only studied the behavioral changes. As to Hans Selye, he uh, used mice and rats, and he studied the changes in biochemistry, and he established something that is more clear to us how to help us in case of these situations. He established the role of electrolyte balance, uh, potassium specifically. He also established that magnesium is very important. And I think everyone knows uh, Magne B6, the famous uh, product you can buy in pharmacies, and it acts as an anti-stress. What else did Hans Selye establish? He found out that along with B6, the vitamin B5 is also very important, and he called this vitamin anti-stress. Steroid hormones. He also studied steroid or sex hormones, how they change in these situations, and he also called the hormone adrenaline as the stress hormone, and that's the achievement of Hans Selye. So the vitamin B5, and we almost don't hear anything about it. This is an anti-stress vitamin, and these scientists studied that the brain uh, con- consists of, by 30% of B5 vitamin, and in case of deficiency of this vitamin, how do we react even in case of insignificant stress? There will be significant changes in our body. Of course, any stress, either if it is minor, major, it hinders our routine. It also affects the behavior, and we face psycho-emotional disturbances, and they are very polar as well. On one hand, we face anxiety, depression, weakness, decreased mood, loss of appetite, and you can see on the slide on the left as if there is a heavy rock on a person. That's uh, one type of stress reaction in some people, or it may cause an opposite reaction. It can cause irritation, insomnia, uh, extreme irritation, or anxiety. And you may have faced this situation when something happens at home, a quarrel, a scandal, something happens. One person is simply sitting, and the other one is worried, and he starts running around the room. If we talk about grave complications of stress, we can even face diseases such as cardiovascular diseases, hypertonia, ischemic heart disease. These things I'm telling you now, uh, that's what I faced in my practice. Bronchial asthma. Uh, uh, One of my acquaintances is a teacher, and there was a very unpleasant stress situation at work. And despite her general well-being, she had an asthmatic attack. She underwent treatment. She seems to have healed quite nicely. But even many years later, if she was passing the building where she used to work, she had an attack of asthma, ulcerous disease, diabetes mellitus, uh, uh, there was an old lady whose granddaughter died at the age of 12 tragically, and she developed these diseases. And psoriasis uh, e- uh, developed in people with post-traumatic stress diseases, those who survived mm, s- the event when other people died. Uh, psoriatic plaques appeared on the skin. Severe stress. Now we move from anxiety to severe stress. And severe stress occurs in case of danger or threat to life. This is the most severe stress, and it occurs in case of natural cataclysms such as earthquakes, floods, volcano eruptions. This is a threat to life, and this is severe stress. Another reason is technogenic situations such as fire, war. Now, Ukraine is experiencing a severe technological stress, technogenic stress. And another option is personal events such as disease or death of a close person, of a family member, uh, significant financial losses, loss of job, loss of a house is also severe stress. And any of these three severe stress situations may result in death in case there is a blood clot in a body and it occludes one of the blood vessels, for example, in the brain. And uh, common people say he had a stroke. And if everything were so bad and stress caused all this death, we wouldn't be able to sit here and now, because humanity, humankind throughout their history uh, faced many cataclysms, and there was not one generation without a period of war. It means that there are some mechanisms in our bodies protecting us from the stress situations. And it turns out that there are different types of stress. You can see the famous painting by Karl Brulov, The Last Day of Pompeii, uh, and those who survived, they continued, they carried on, they gave birth to children who also gave birth to children, etc., etc. And uh, it continued for generations. So there is something that can protect us. And now about the different types of stress. I've already said there are different types of stress. And the first is eustress. Eustress. And it has a positive effect. It is a short-term stress resulting in improved memory, and I think many of us uh, had and experienced such situations when you've seen your whole life before your eyes very, very fast. And at that moment, you can remember anything, and the immune system reacts immediately. The rate of tissue degeneration increases, the intellectual capacity increases, and we can make a decision very, very quickly. Increased stamina and endurance of the nervous system, and the senses of the organs of senses work better. Eustress is our protection, and we have it to be able to react quickly. The second type of stress is distress. And it means something negative, a kind of grief. So when do we experience it? When there is long lasting stress. This stress may not be very severe, but it lasts for a long time and it accumulates in the human body, in the brain, and it starts destroying us. It is destructive. Distress results in changes of the natural circadian cycle. A person cannot fall asleep and then cannot wake up. It means that these circadian changes and the level of hormone production are impaired. Then it's difficult to breathe and it affects the respiratory system, then the heart. And the next type of stress is emotional stress, and the next one is psychological stress. What I want to say about these two types of stress, I am a geneticist, and domination of the genes is a very interesting topic, and you all are aware of a situation when you experience a stress situation like a fire or you've witnessed a traffic accident and there are several manifestations that are emotional and psychological. There are some people that are kind of paralyzed. They are unable to move. He or she needs to run, but is unable to move. Another reaction, it's not because they are afraid. The body runs away. Later on, he or she will understand that they should have stayed, but that's the psychological reaction. So the first reaction type of reaction, a person freezes. The second type of reaction, a person runs away. And the third reaction, the person runs into this fire, runs into this burning car to pull this person, the victim, out, etc. So about the dominance of genes, or why, in case of this first shock reaction, there are three types of response in people. The fact is, it is related to the memory of genes of our uh, foreparents. And if our uh, foreparents lived in a forest territory, and the only way to save themselves from wild animals was to uh, become one with nature, to turn into a kind of tree, to freeze. If this gene is dominating in uh, and your ancestors lived in the forest, then this will be your reaction to freeze. If your ancestors uh, left more genes, more gene memory, if they are from a desert and the only way to survive, to save their life, uh, is to run away from wild animals, from a battle. So your reactions will be to run away. And finally, to attack, to go forward, to move and do something. It's when you have genes and you cannot control, your brain cannot control that. It is in case when your ancestors lived in the mountains, because if you face this problem like an enemy or an animal, there is a mountain behind you. If you freeze, you will die. If you run away, you can't run away. The only way to survive is to attack.
So you can see where your origins are. If we speak about the evolution of stress, its stages, here nature took care of us in millions of years. And what did it develop so that no matter what happens in our body, we would still survive? and not go mad. So, if there is a systematic long term stress, then our system, our body goes through three stages. And why is it easy to speak for me right now? Because the war has been here in Ukraine for half a year, and I'm have watched it with my own eyes. So it's not a theory for me. It's practical. So the first stage is anxiety stage. And we can now see the evolution from weak stress to a strong one, which is the threat of life. So what is anxiety stage? It's shock, and it goes for just several minutes. In this stage, the signal war. Don't you think everybody in Ukraine was shocked? I'm now, of course, taking an extreme. I'm glad you do not experience such an awful thing. But, well, something happens, some shock. Maybe you receive news that someone died. But, well, the first several minutes, it's a shock. And then signal goes to brain through hypothalamus, hypophysis, and then hypophysis then launches hormones, adrenaline, cortisol, and what happens? Activation of immune system cells. Time passes. The next stage is the stage of resistance or adaptation, because body dislikes this condition, and it tries to resist and adapt to these changes within its nervous system. This is the stage that goes from several hours to 3-5 days. What happens during this stage? Our brain is looking for a way out. Our body starts adapting to this long-term impact of stress. And if the source of stress ends at this stage, then the body on its own is able to self-regulate and bring itself to norm and get healthy. But what happens during this time? Cortisol that came through during the first stage of shock, there is such a big amount of it being launched that then what happens? Our muscles start to lose calcium. First muscle to suffer is our heart. Also, our bones lose calcium, and it goes out with urine, and metabolism is impaired. And then the process of obesity starts. Why am I saying that? Be- because if it's not a strong stress when there is a war, but for example, diets, a person goes through different diets for years. Is it a stress for the body? Yes, of course. And this stage that is called resistance of adaptation, I've already told you about calcium. And why does it happen that when person on a diet, they lose several kilos, but then they gain even more? Then I'm telling you what is happening, because the body is under stress, and I, and the body couldn't care less how smart or not smart you are. The task of the body given to it by nature is to survive. So, if we have a lengthy stage of adaptation, if we go back to this war situation, then after 5 days, you no longer have panic and other manifestations And what happens? People start to talk normally and to plan some actions. They start to simply live, but differently. So the third stage, if this situation continues, stressful situation continues, then there is a stage of exhaustion or distress. Distress when there is overload of there is psychological disorder, and then it goes into somatic diseases. Something starts to ache. How it happens? It happens this way. The body thymus of immune system starts to decrease in the body, while adrenal or starts to increase. And then there are bleeds and even ulcers of the mucus of gastrointestinal tract. And for many years, there was this theory of how ulcers come to be in duodenum and in stomach. So they were called it cortico visceral theory. So this research went on, and it turned out there is something else. You know, the bacteria that cause those ulcers, but the distress is still destructive. And these manifestations that I said, they are similar, both for men and for women. Only the consequences in men are with one problem more. Why? Because there is a decrease of erectile function. So, what's our task? To increase stress tolerance and to prepare ourselves, because we do not know what awaits each and every one of us, and even the whole humanity, what cataclysms or pandemics await us. So, of course, it would be smart to take care of our reactivity towards stress. Increase of stress tolerance also works for rejuvenation. As I said, we already know certain micro or macronutrients, vitamins, and minerals that increase our health. For us to have milder process through stressful situations. So these are vitamins of B group. Now I'm just listing them for you to understand. B2, this is an interesting vitamin. It cannot compile in our body. As much as we have, we spend it. B3, nicotine acid. B5, I already told you that this is anti-stress vitamin. And it's closer to the brain. And also it has another name, and you will understand why. Calcium pentatenate, because calcium fast disappears fast from the body during stress. So B5, it's the anti-stress vitamin. B6 is clear. It's a very important vitamin for central nervous system for the brain. B9, folic acid. You have heard about it. B12. So all the group B. Then vitamin C. Why vitamin C? Because during stress, vitamin C instantaneously is destroyed and can go to zero, completely be destroyed in the body. What does that mean? It means that then our joints get destroyed. And if, well, let's take Ukraine. If before war some had some joint ache, it was difficult for people to get up from the bed in the morning or walk up, but people still could do something. Then after this super heavy stress, when the war started, we couldn't have imagined that in the 21st century. Then the joints start to get destroyed, and the pain was unbearable. And people who could have lived better for a while had to go through joint replacement surgery. Next, fat soluble vitamins E, tocopherol, and D, of course, and health is supporting system for us in the 21st century. I love this slide. This man knows that he has to find the point of support to concentrate, and I'm completely sure that his vitamins and minerals are fine in his body. As to these women, well, they still need to take supplements. I haven't done that. So the concept of health in the 21st century has changed, and we understand that we can manage things, and we have to remember that magnesium, potassium, zinc, and manganese and iron as microelements are important. Let's turn to nature first. There are products in nature that we have to pay attention to, more attention, or much more attention on our dishes. So, with certain food, we can increase our stress tolerance. Let bananas, fresh tomatoes, fat cold fish. And there might be a question, I've encountered them before. Duolife has collagen from seafood, from cold fish. And there were questions, what fish? It's cod from Baltic Sea, and it's not something that is in deficit. Eggs, dairy. Here I will dwell a little. And we see nature offers on this slide, and we have common code with nature. Those who listened to my previous webinars about why do life, I told you in great detail about this code in our body and how we can communicate with nature and get benefit of that. So this code is important, and our body tells us what to eat, and we even wish to eat something. I think all of you have experienced that. Suddenly you wish to eat something specific. But here is the problem of smart head. We heard, for example, that dairy is bad, very bad. And here you have to understand, if you want something from dairies, then take cottage cheese and eat it. Then beans, cabbage, carrot, microgreens, different seeds you can buy in different supermarkets. They are already packaged for you, and it's very good. Plant oils, nuts, avocados. I know many became friends with avocado because they understand how useful it is and how it helps our body.
And the berries of good mood. What are uh, these berries? Strawberry and raspberry. And even those who do not know about the composition of these berries can imagine what are poor insides called at least in Russian, they are called strawberry. And if something happens in a place, this place in Russian also is called raspberry. Uh, because these berries help increase stress resistance. There are other plants that are also very necessary. Uh, Melissa, uh, Baldrian, Radiola, and other plants, very interesting ones. So, how can we relieve anxiety? There are certain techniques for relieving anxiety, and I'm now sharing my experience, how I helped people because I understood these processes, and it all was in bomb shelters, in underground, when people are in shock and everyone is sitting, everyone is experiencing different things. But when the mm, attack stopped for the first days, I made my neighbors, because the entire uh, inhabitants went to the bomb shelter. I said the first thing they have to do is they have to clean their flat. I said I would come and check. So they had to tidy, they had to wash, etc. And the second thing is to do something new, something unusual, because we need to launch new neuron links in our brain. The uh, perfect option is to start learning a new language, or can start sewing or knitting or gardening. Next is sport, bicycle, jogging. The body must move. And I have a neighbor working in hospital, and you can imagine when they started receiving wounded, damaged, unhappy soldiers. After her shift, she came home and she was so tired she could simply fall down and fall asleep. But she put on tracksuit and she started just jogging for 30, 40 minutes before the curfew. I was worried about her. I was checking the time, waiting for her before the curfew. But that was her way how to relieve anxiety. Next is, it is difficult, but it is possible to regulate your sleep regimen, whether you fall asleep or not. But you have to lie down at a certain time. You have to force yourself. Uh, Sauna is a wonderful way to treat your body. Massage, respiratory exercises. Many people know about that. Rest. Simply plan your rest. Take a day off. Don't do anything. Maybe for the entire day, maybe for half a day. But treat yourself. Don't do anything. Look into the mirror more often. And I know, well, I live in a three-story building, and I made all women to make a new hairstyle, haircut, color their, dye their hair, and very quickly everyone understood it really helps. Another thing that is very important to relieve stress, uh, instead of increasing. You can do that by sharing your joy, but miraculously enough, people are very eager to share negative things. They say something, they also add something that didn't happen, but it's very important for oxytocin production that relieves stress. We need to increase positive emotions. Our brain is made in a very interesting way to neutralize stress, to prevent infarction, bleeding, etc. If we experience one stress, we need seven positive emotions to counteract it. And the simplest technique, make a gift, make yourself a gift. So everyone must know what is pleasant for your body. For someone, it might be a coffee and um, a piece of cake. For someone, it might be some sweets. For someone, it might be two bananas, not one, but two bananas. For someone, it might be shopping. You need to feel your body. You should not pay so much attention to the brain. Think about your body. Think how you can do something nice and pleasant for your body to get these seven positive emotions to uh, uh, relieve stress. And of course, laughter and the smiles, it means serotonin, oxytocin. Do you know what I did? We had to go down into the basement two, three times a night. We even didn't get undressed because we only slept for a while and then we had to run to the bomb shelter. I was telling jokes to make people laugh and smile. Humor is very important. And despite the very difficult situation in Ukraine, we have a lot of funny videos and videos with people rejoicing. It all helps. There are groups of people who believe if there is a stress, you need to consume alcohol. Let me tell you, as a doctor who understands the effect of alcohol, alcohol increases and makes stronger the emotional state you were in before consuming alcohol. It means if you were in a good mood, remember, there is a nice group of people, you had fun, you feel the same emotions but stronger. But if you are stressed, if you are in a poor mood, you consumed alcohol and your negative emotions became stronger and it destroys your body. So doesn't make any sense to make the situation worse. So please remember that alcohol makes stronger the last psychological emotional state that you were in before starting drinking. How to make friends with stress? Uh, there are techniques, of course, and you may know there are recommendations by psychologists, etc. Uh, I will give you tips that are given by psychologists, geneticists, and specialists in supplements and herb compositions. I know there are things that you will remember. So you can stop breathing for as long as you can and then very, very slowly exhale. You can drink warm, sweet liquid, water maybe. Then remember that during stress, the amount of liquid needs to be quickly increased by half a liter for the brain because there is adrenaline, there is cortisol from the adrenal cortex, and it irritates the brain. How can you relieve that? You can relieve that by additional liquid, by water. It can be warm sweet fluid, can be water. And as there is no point of support in a stress situation, start uh, doing massage or start touching your fingers. Start massaging your fingers. You can even have this habit. Next, if you can't do that, but you have to start clapping your hands. Why? Because the adrenaline produced in the body, it accumulates in our hands. And if you remember when you attended concerts and you liked something, you clapped for a long time and your hands became red. And when you were going out, leaving the theater or wherever you came, you say, I rested so well. Why? Because you destroyed adrenaline. So you have to clap your hands. Next, if you are in a shock and you can't wrap your hands around it and you don't know, you're at loss what documents you need to take, what to do. If there is someone next to you, that's very good. And for example, you choose a color, green one, for example. Uh, Choose with your eyes everything green that you see or everything red. Select a color so that your eyes, your brain are occupied. Start looking for everything of this specific color. Another very positive thing, and I did all that in a bomb shelter, and I could see the eyes of these people. I knew their state, and I made them do all that. And you have to count not from 1 to 10, but from 10 to 1. And even better, from 50 down to 1, 50, 49, 48, 47. And the person is busy, and this stress neuron link is destroyed, and it protects the brain. And if something happens near you involving people and people are in shock, people are in stress, and you understand how to act, what to do to help not yourself, but the injured person, the best technique I've seen in practice, approach a person so that he returns to this life quicker and ask Petya hit Kolya, who is the one who wanted to fight. So the person starts thinking what was the question, what was happening, who is Kolya, who is Vita, etc. And it helps very much. And now we are going to talk, but before that, a couple of words. What, yes, what are the compositions of supplements? What are the herb compositions that will help and why? Sorry, wrong direction. So, dual life day and night, as said, it restores circadian rhythm of the entire body. It restores energy, ensures for life. Serotonin is produced in daytime and melatonin at night. Many people think that psychologists are the only ones that can help, but I can assure you, you can get ready for stress and the reactivity of your body will be adequate, and we will protect our physical health and maintain it even in case of war. So our liquid gold is the source of oil-soluble vitamins, vitamins E and D that are necessary, and in the morning or at noon. Why? Because vitamin D is the vitamin of sun, and we get the sun in the morning, and of course, omega 3, 6, and 9.
My blood, B vitamin source, zinc, selenium, iron, which is necessary to all our main systems. Chlorophyll. About chlorophyll, this is a very interesting topic because now we see on the market many different companies with chlorophyll and many questions accompanying that, and many bloggers who seem to know it all and they do something to people's brains. And for some reason, people believe them when they tell something in 2, 3 minutes. So, in detail about our chlorophyll duolife, I will tell you when we meet next time, and you will find out many interesting things. So, what is here from anti stress? It's magnesium and oxygenation source, which means it helps brain to get more oxygen. Vitamin C, which we cannot synthesize on our own, and the stronger stress, the more we spend vitamin C, and it can even go to zero, as I told you before. Now, there might be different stress, medium or complicated stress. At this point, many people have headaches. And then, personally, for you, we have this product. It contains radiola, which I said as a manganese source. And it stimulates glands and the sex hormones, everything that suffers in stress. Uh, Besides, it contains parthenolates, which regulates and helps vessels to dilate and go back, which uh, helps against migraines, and it helps with memory. B2 vitamin, as I said, which is not stored in our body, and during stress it's destroyed, and then you have the headache. There are people who during stress situations have problem with gastrointestinal tract. For some the weakest link is head, for some it's gastrointestinal tract. So we have direct connection between brain and guts. So during stress we have this connection instantaneously. And and here, this is based on my experience. I have one neighbor. When there were first alarms, she was incessantly vomiting, and the other neighbor had diarrhea, and she had to sit instead of running down. It happens to students when they have exams, they are weak in their gut. So my gastrin product helps quite fast, and we've seen good results with those who during stress get impacted in this way. There are people whose heart weakens and it's difficult for them to breathe. Then there are very important ingredients for heart. So potassium and hawthorn. So everything that is important for the heart during stress. Relaxin speaks for itself, uh, and it has many essential oils. And it speaks about relaxing, of course. But you have to know, if all the previous products strengthen you uh, ahead of time to increase reactivity. As to pro-relaxin, then it helps you to normalize blood pressure, especially those who have hypertonic or ischemic diseases. But what else? There is this ingredient L-tryptophan, then it helps you to keep psychic health, mental health with B3 vitamin, because during stress it goes down, disappears, gets destroyed, and without B3 vitamin, some parts of brain even start to die. And now antibacterial uh, gel, and this is when I told you have to rub your fingers or rub your palms, you can do that with this gel. You can massage your palms of your hands and your fingers, because are 5 essential oils, and they get in fast through the skin, and they help you to leave the first stage of stress. And I told you that it's anxiety. So to relieve anxiety, so this antibacterial gel helps us a lot. So here we stop and see you again, but we have to thank our interpreters. For Ukrainian language, Natalia; for English, we have two interpreters who helped me to keep in touch with you, Helena and Irina, and for Latvian language, another Yelena.